Hey, is this thing on? Hello? Hit it again. I think it's on now. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, where each week, Doc will drag some colorful characters out of the woods to talk trail and Type 2 fun. If you're aspiring hiker trash, or if you're just looking to understand the hiker trash in your life, look no further. So lace up those boots, gnaw on some jerky, and settle into your 20-mile pace as we fire up the podcast from somewhere deep in the backcountry. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags, hiker trash, and of course, good-smelling day hikers. I'm Doc, and this is Hiker Trash Radio. Hey, if you like what we're doing here, help us out. Take just a minute, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you don't like what we're doing, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right. Let's get to this week's guest, a solo thru hiker with over 3,000 miles under her belt, who has also taken her passion for the outdoors and applied it to her day job. Welcome to Hiker Trash Radio, Katie Houston. How's it going, Katie?
Thank you. It's going really well. I'm excited to chat trail.
I'm excited to have you on. So now listen, in those 3,000 miles that you put under your trail runners, have you picked up a trail name?
Have picked up a trail name. My trail name is Oats. I was very nearly a chipper or a sunshine in my first week on the AT, and I very much so rejected those because I could not keep up the disposition of somebody named Chipper or Sunshine to Katahdin. So I lived with my grandma right before I did the trail for the year before my last year of college, and it was my first thru hike. And so I decided I was going stoveless, and we always had breakfast together every morning, and she would lay out these little Quaker brown sugar packs of oatmeal, you know the ones. And she, before I left, put about 6 of those in a little quart-sized Ziploc bag and gave it to me and said, "Here for the trail." And I didn't have the heart to tell her I was stoveless and also a college student that could not turn down free food. And so I just took it with me and started eating it dry that night in Springer Mountain Shelter. And I had a broken spoon already. I had broken it on my frozen peanut butter that morning, first day on trail. So I think the scene just called for the trail name Oats.
Oats. Now, you bring up a good point, because those two names that someone tried to put on you, Chipper and Sunshine, I mean, sometimes there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure that comes with a trail name. If you're given a trail name like Chipper, I mean, that indicates that you're someone who's going to be positive all the time. And it is tough sometimes to be positive all the time out on trail.
I completely agree. I really didn't want a trail name that was going to have some kind of assumption about me tied to it, other than I like to eat oats, which is a fine one. So I could really, it felt like a name, and it still currently does. I go by Oats professionally in the industry, which is quite cool to kind of have this. I would say it's almost like an alter ego, but it truly just kind of feels like myself, because I've grown into this passion in the last 5 years. Funnily, my real name is Catherine, because my mom thought it would get me further in life being named Catherine, even though she wanted me to be called Katie always. And now I am professionally known as Oats, which I think is a hilarious story circling back.
Yeah. And what is mom's take on that whole thing? You know, I mean, she named you Catherine, so you can go far professionally, and now it's become Oats.
Mom's along for the ride. My mom and my grandma, I love them dearly. They're my biggest cheerleaders. And also they called the Rangers on me in the Smokies the first 2 weeks of my Appalachian Trail. So the thru hike, after 3 days. And I had told them, if you don't hear from me for 5, then you can call somebody. Cause that's the amount of time that I know I'll be in a town at some point. I will definitely have service. I'll definitely be able to touch base. And after a couple of days, they panicked. As much as I love them, they have very big hearts and very big worries. And so when I got out of the northern end of the Smokies, had a message on Facebook from the Fontana Dam Visitor Center, and they said, "Hey, Katie, your mom got in contact with us. We're assembling a search party. Are you okay? And I said, yes, I am. So truly, my mom and my grandma are kind of along for the ride. They're just happy I'm happy, as I love them for.
Yeah, there can be some trepidation and some worry on behalf of family members who have children out on the trail. I've talked to a number of people who have had similar experiences. I had one guy on who was dropped off at the Mexican border by his mom when he was 18, right after graduating high school. He was going to do the PCT, and she made him promise to take a picture of every license plate of the car that was he was going to have a hitch with. And so that's one of the items there. But also, I think there's additional concern, right or wrong, when there is a young lady out there hiking solo, and it really shows their commitment to you and their care about you, that after 3 days of not hearing from you, they almost launched a full-blown search party.
That's true. That's very true. And I think they have more confidence in me as I have more confidence in myself in the backcountry. They can hear it in my voice. I'm a very open book and a very genuine person, and I cannot tell a lie or cover up an emotion to save my life. And so being very realistic about how it was out there, and experiencing some conflict, or even just not reaching out because I know that I'm not 100%, and therefore it would stress them out to hear from me. I kind of try and get a well-rounded perspective, and I am okay out here and I am doing what I want to do. I have been told that I'm stupid for not carrying a gun on trail. A lot of people ask me where my boyfriend is, or where my dad is, or the male figure in my life that I clearly need permission from to go into the woods. So I just kind of let it roll off at this point. I hope that, I think I love most is when I encounter another young woman roughly my age that I see myself in any way, whether it's just enjoying the outdoors in solitude, or it's, I'm not so sure about this aspect of being in the outdoors, whether it's navigation or finding water. I love being able to talk with young women like me, because I can, most of the time, alleviate their fears in a positive way. I'm not fear-mongering, and I'm being realistic, because there are a lot of solutions for a lot of the problems that you come across on trail. And you just got to find what works for you as an individual. And sometimes that can mean different things, but I think I'm fortunate enough to be in a position in this industry that I typically, I'm pretty dialed in to what information somebody might find useful for their own life.
Yeah, a couple things to follow up there. I love it that you love to find hikers that look like you, same age, same gender, because I think there's an automatic connection there. I mean, you're coming from a similar background and experience, maybe not experience, but similar life experience, right? And, admittedly, male hikers, like myself, like others out there, they don't have to take things, I don't know how to state this. There are certain things they don't have to worry about. I mean, they go out and they're not even concerned. It doesn't even enter their mind some of the things that young women solo hikers have to think about. I had a young lady on who, she actually mapped out all of the shelters on the AT and decided she was going to stay in the ones that were furthest away from the roads, from the main access points to the trail, because she just felt safer that way, which that would never, ever cross my mind. I mean, that it just shows what a different experience this can be for young women out there. Have you had similar concerns?
Maybe in theory, but truly, the things that concern me personally the most are things like weather, and lightning storms when I'm above tree line in Colorado, a bear outside of my tent. Like those are the things that keep me personally up at night. However, I totally understand all of those different, I think what's so beautiful about through hiking is the concept of hike your own hike. There is no one perfect way to do it. And if someone is telling you that there is one perfect way to do it, they're doing you a disservice. With the exception of good stewardship of the land and like respecting other visitors, you know. But I truly, I see. So I love having those conversations with people that, you know, are my age and my gender and everything. That's where I would say I'm most comfortable, because I can draw from experience. But I do truly value every conversation I have with a person that does have any of those hesitations, like whether it's a Black person hitching in Southern Appalachians, and anything that I can do to like understand more of that perspective, and then see where there might be some solution, or even just, well, what would make you feel safer? Figuring out every shelter that's just off of the, you know, that's far away from the roads. Okay, let's figure out how to do that, because the trail is set up to, you know, work with that. And so I think there are all of these beautiful ways that people can interact and make themselves comfortable on a long distance hike. So it's such a juxtaposition from when people initially learn about through hiking and they're like, you got to carry all your food for 6 months, and getting to the point of like, well, an 83-year-old man finished the trail in the last couple of years as a through hike in 6 months. And so these are really outstanding stories. Like, there are so many outstanding people in this community to point at and be like, look at what this person did to solve their own particular issue or their own particular anxiety. So that's a part of what I love about my job right now, is just like telling all of those stories. And I think that is a real tool for increasing accessibility in these outdoor spaces, and through hiking specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And let's go back to that question about, hey, are you bringing a gun with you? Because you're not the only one to get that question. I've had that question. Others out there I've talked to have had that question. People who don't understand the trail community and what happens out on the trail. You know, I think that's a common concern is what are you bringing to protect yourself out there? And number one, a gun is way too much weight to carry. I mean, that's extra weight. That's not ultralight at all. And two, I would say that, you know, 99 point something of the people out there on the trail are such a supportive, positive, helpful force. You know, there's always the opportunity for a malcontent, danger, whatever. But I think the risk is pretty low. It's a very supportive community.
I fully agree. I was dating this guy back in college who had done the AT before college, and I did it after. So I hadn't done it yet. And I was getting all these stories from him, and he would come over to have dinner with my family, and they would ask him all of these questions because they want to hear that it's safe and they want their fears alleviated for part of my mom and my grandma. And so what he told them that stuck with me is, if you draw a 2,200 mile line anywhere in the country, you're probably going to come across 6 deaths, or more than that statistically. And that's like the average number of deaths back in, this was 2016. I don't know what it is now, but if you talk about like accidents versus malicious intent versus like you said, there's always the opportunity for somebody to be malicious or for something bad to happen. But I personally feel a lot safer in the woods than I do in society. It truly is what calms my anxieties. I am the only person out there that I have to worry about, and that is incredibly comforting to me.
All right. Now, Katie, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before? I'm hoping you say yes.
I have. I listened to your episode with Chardonnay while I was on the long trail. It was a really incredible episode.
She's an incredible woman. What a story.
Everyone go listen to that episode with Chardonnay.
Now, Oats, I only asked that because I want to make sure that you are aware of a segment towards the end of the episode. Back in season 5, it used to be called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. We have now kind of reframed that to be hiking hacks. And so this will be a chance for you to share with our listeners a bit of trail wisdom to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
Okay, sounds good. I'll noodle on it.
Okay. And feel free to drop hiking hacks throughout the episode. But when we do get there, you will be on the hook for the official one.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay. Trailblazers Toolkit.
That's right. It's time for the Trailblazers Toolkit, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. Now, Oats, I love to talk about gear on the podcast, and I love to hear about the most important item in my guest adventure gear. So if you were preparing for your next adventure and I was the one providing you with all your gear, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? Make sure to give me all the specifics on that piece of gear and tell me why you've got to have it out there. And this could be any type of item. It could be gear, it could be apparel, it could be a luxury item. So Oats, what is that item in your toolkit?
Well, anyone who knows me or frankly anything about me for the last couple months is not going to be surprised by this, but it is 100% true. My Sawyer Squeeze water filter. I started the Appalachian Trail with a very kind of what I would consider now to be an old school sense of backpacking. I had my backpack and my sleeping bag that I had been given by Santa when I was 10, and my pack was over 30 pounds, but I had my iodine drops and I had my many layers and everything that I thought I needed. And then I realized how much I really didn't like iodine. It was wildly inconvenient. I didn't necessarily mind the taste so much, but I really didn't like that I had to sit at the water source for 30 minutes or carry the water if I wanted to keep walking before I could drink it for 30 minutes. And I'm a very, I hyperfixate. I tend to hyperfixate, and hiking is something that feels like a positive hyperfixation. And when I am hiking, I do not want to stop and have a chore. And so I hated sitting and not doing anything. And then I hated walking with the water when I didn't have to. I wanted it in my body. So I switched to Sawyer Squeeze a couple 100 miles into the AT after the Smokies, and it has not let me down since. Let me clarify. I actually started with the mini, then I went to micro, then I went to squeeze. Because if you've used all three, the flow rate of the squeeze is really stellar, and it has a lifetime guarantee. And so chef's kiss, love it. My system now that I'm like fully dialed in and I kind of know what I like to do on trail, I have my little smart water bottle. I put my Sawyer Squeeze directly on my smart water bottle. I always decorate them with stickers. This one is currently undecorated because I had to get a new one because a concert made me throw it away last week and I cried. But Sawyer Squeeze just goes on the top of the water bottle, and it's literally as easy as that. It filters out 99.99999% of bacteria, protozoa, cysts. There's some limitations to the technology, like not heavy metals and viruses, but that's pretty standard for the kind of filtration technology in the Sawyer Squeeze. Yeah, I could go on about this forever because this is literally my job now. But if anyone has any additional questions, either pop into my DMs or pop into Sawyer's DMs because I'm in there too. But yeah, I have one dirty bottle, one clean bottle, and that's pretty much exactly how I roll. It depends on the trail, what water capacity I like to carry, but usually between 2 and 4 liters is pretty safe for most trails. So yeah, that's
wow. You sound very knowledgeable about water filtration, and I wonder why.
I wonder why.
Now, speaking as a man in his 50s, flow rate is very important.
Yes.
I'll just let that sit there for a second.
Oh.
Yeah, but yes. No, you definitely don't want to sit around a water source for 30 minutes waiting until you can drink, especially when you've just gone through a hot stretch and you are thirsty. That could be just agonizing. So
it was a pain. It was a real pain. I didn't even mind the taste that much. That's how inconvenient the time was. Like I could deal with the taste if it was just immediate.
Yeah. I bought iodine pellets or pills when I first started backpacking. Do you think that's a common, I don't want to say mistake, but a common purchase for first timers? They're looking for, how to make sure that the water is safe that they're going to drink. And they, what if the filter fails? What else should I bring with me?
Okay, that's a good question. I think it depends on how that person was introduced to the outdoors, because it might have been from their grandpa who uses a hand pump, and that's how and it's 4 pounds, and that's how he's done it forever, and so that's how he taught you, and that's how you do it. That's how I started using the iodine drops. I was in this adventure group when I was a kid, and we learned kind of old school backpacking. I don't know if ultralight backpacking was even really a thing back then in the 2010s, 2000, I don't know. But yeah, so I think it really depends on that person's experience and that person's comfort level, because you pack your fears, right? So if somebody is, if water filtration is high on their anxiety list personally, then I see nothing wrong with throwing some extra iodine in there just so you can sleep at night a little better. But as far as like filter failing goes, as long as you sleep with it, you want to snuggle in with it at night if it's going to freeze, that's really the only threat to that filter, or a crushing or something. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen to you, because that would not bode well for whatever happened to your physical pack.
Yes. And then you mentioned that you get hyper fixated on things, and that helps my theory about thru hikers, that I think thru hiking really lends itself to folks who have that hyper fixation or kind of obsessive personalities. They like to, plan. They like to, think about this. They like to get their gear together. They weigh their gear. I mean, there's a whole lot of fixation that goes into thru hiking. And so you've now, I've now put you in that column of my guests who are hyper fixated to some degree. And it's overwhelmingly that seems to be the case.
Yes, I would definitely say that. I would say it's a passion. I would say it's healthy for for how it's currently in my life. There was this article on the Trek a couple years ago. I can't remember who wrote it, but on whether thru hiking is an addiction, or like it explored the concept of thru hiking as an addiction. And not to actually compare it to real substance abuse, but as far as like the high highs to the low lows in a very short period of time, you can get used to that. There's something in that kind of I really got bit by the bug. Like my degree is in geology. And then I did the trail, and I was like, okay, I got to figure out how to make this my entire personality and life, because it truly did just feel that fulfilling being on trail, having that total mental reset, and the physical activity of it, the social aspect of it, individual and social. Like truly, it's this melting pot of all of these things that make me feel fulfilled. And so that's why I keep pouring myself into it again and again and again. But now I have this routine when I come back to my daily life. It's also pretty good now, and I'm kind of settling into it. And I'm really just, I'm grateful for where I'm at now, both on and off trail. So it's cool having the perspective shift. It's just different now, and that's good.
That's interesting, that article about, is it an addiction or not? And I know that a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people out on the trail are dealing with some kind of trauma. They're sorting things out. And oftentimes with trauma, I mean, it occupies a big space in your brain. And there's a lot of perseverating, a lot of impact that it has on your daily activities. And I think people out there working on things, because you're able to then substitute your preoccupation with maybe the trail and daily life on the trail with that trauma. And also you have a lot of time to think.
That's true. There's like a different story for every perspective here. Sean Jansen, we just worked with him a couple months ago. He hiked the PCT back in, I want to say it was maybe 8 years ago. And he talked about it exacerbating his alcoholism, and then coming out, the social drinking and the trail culture was exacerbating his substance abuse. And so when he got off trail is when he finally, after a couple of years, I don't remember his story, you'll have to read it, but he did find sobriety and reflected on the experience. And there's a whole spectrum of experience to interact with these long trails. It just totally depends on the individual and where they're at, and how they choose to find that fulfillment, if that's what they're looking for out there.
Absolutely. Dave Music Man Chandler was living on the streets of Nashville. He was down to one person who would accept his phone calls, and that was his brother. And he made that call to his brother and said, I need to do something, or I'm going to die on these streets. And he said, I'm thinking about hiking the AT. And his brother said, I've got gear. I think that's a great idea. Let's do this. And so within 24 hours, he had been outfitted by his brother and was starting from Springer Mountain and was able to kick it.
That's amazing. And programs like Warrior Hikes that are getting veterans on the trail, like all of these different organizations that are working to put people, like you said, from these places of trauma and on the trail is a really special part of our community. All the support there. I personally got diagnosed with PTSD 2 weeks before I went on the long trail. And I'm currently still processing a lot of that. It was kind of a shock to me. And being on the trail, just out there by myself with my dog for half of it, but surrounded by friends on this whole trip that I had was a really, really healing experience for me. I feel more like myself than I have since college. And I like myself now. Not that I didn't then, but I'm feeling more comfortable with the personality that I have. And I think a lot of that comes from just being in the woods and being alone. And the only person you have out there is you. And so, you either make jokes and you laugh at them, or, do a little dance and that makes you happy. All of these little things. I kind of like learned all of these different things that let me fall in love with myself again, as I'm kind of a people pleaser. And so being away from the people when I'm out in the woods is a really special part of the experience for me.
There's some pressure on people pleasers because they have this expectation of themselves that they will fill the silences. They will entertain folks. There's this added responsibility.
Yeah, I would argue even I would argue even for women, it's heightened expectation to be the de-escalator of conflict and all of that is stuff that I'm currently processing.
Now, Katie, we don't have to argue. I'll take your word on that. Now, my listeners would be after me if I didn't ask the question, and feel free to tell me no. Are you able to share, why you had PTSD, why you were diagnosed with PTSD?
Interpersonal relationship issues. But I had some gnarly breakups the last couple of years, and unfortunately, the kind of leftovers from those relationships, I haven't unlearned what was helping me in those relationships. So that's kind of what I'm working on now, is unlearning the negative and relearning what it is like to have people that really care about your emotions in your emotional state and want to hear what you have to say and are genuinely trying to connect with you in a vulnerable way. I think there's a lot of fulfillment in vulnerability and in connection with others. And it's something that I love about myself, that I am an open book. It's also not really by choice. I truly cannot hide an emotion to save my life. So having this full open book personality and also these kind of like triggers around my emotional state now is an interesting kind of minefield to walk back into the world with. And I'm relearning I'm learning my triggers. I'm in social situations that I haven't been in over, in 6 months, but even before that for a long time. And just having to kind of take whatever happens to me physically in stride, and also be kind to myself and forgiving to myself about, where I'm at is, and then communicative to my friends that, or in this situation didn't even know that there was a trigger to be had, because I didn't know there was a trigger to be had. So, yeah, I think that's also why I feel so darn comfortable in the woods, because all of my triggers are social right now that I've noticed, and physical, but with other people. They all involve other people. So out in the woods, I know I'm not going to get triggered. It's just me. It's just me and my dog. And that's safe. That's safety. I feel that with some of my best friends too, and my family. And I have them all very, very close. I hold them all very, very close for that reason.
Yeah, there is truly a simplicity of purpose out there in the woods I mean, you're literally getting up and you're hiking to your next campsite, right? And you're leaving so many trappings of the outside world behind. There's no phone calls, there's no appointments, there's no meetings. That is all kind of in the background, off to the side as you're out there just walking from one place to another and doing that repeatedly for a number of days until you complete whatever trail you're doing.
Yeah, it's the routine. There's a lot of stability in the routine, and I've been seeking stability for a long period of time, and it's ironic to a lot of people that I have found stability in something like through hiking. But very honestly, that's what it is. It feels like stability when I'm out there. I know the routine, I know what I like, and I know I'm just walking.
That's right. Now, you mentioned earlier old school backpacking, and that kind of reminded me of a guest that I had in the past, Tim Jarvis, who recreated the Shackleton, not the whole expedition, but the part where they went from Elephant Island back to Stromness whaling station, where I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Shackleton story.
Assume I'm not.
Okay. So Ernest Shackleton, when he went to reach the South Pole, he left in 1914. His boat and his men became trapped in the ice, and he was stuck on the ice for more than a year. And they finally, the ship was destroyed. They had to bring their kind of rowboats and haul them across the ice, hundreds of miles to finally get to the open ocean. They sailed from that point to Elephant Island, which, if you're off by a degree, you miss it by miles. That's how far away it was. And then from Elephant Island, they left everybody back there except for 5 guys that went with Shackleton over to Prince George Island, which is another several hundred miles, where they then landed on the wrong side of the island, had to go overland to climb over these mountains to get to the whaling station, where they then mounted a rescue effort to go back to Elephant Island. The first 3 rescue attempts failed, and the 4th one finally they were able to get the men off the island. And during that whole time, nobody died, which is just absolutely crazy to me.
Amazing. I actually did listen to a podcast about this on the long trail, and it was the first time I had heard the story, and the whole podcast was about the third man effect, and how at the very end of their journey, when they were going the last leg, him and those 2 other people, it felt like there was a 4th man there, and it felt like something was encouraging them to go on, and there was just a presence. I thought it was very fascinating, the whole third man effect. I love the idea of, like, we might not be alone, and there's some existential energy things at work that we do not understand with science yet. I love those kinds of concepts. So that was the context that I know the story in. But what were you saying about your guest that you had on?
So my guest, Tim Jarvis, he was a Shackleton expert, and he was asked by the granddaughter of Shackleton to recreate the part of the journey from Elephant Island to Prince George, and then going overland into Stromness whaling station. And so they used the same technology that was available to Shackleton, and they recreated that whole journey. And it's just mind-blowing what they experienced. And if it piques your fancy, take a listen to that episode. It's really, really informative. But I only bring that up because when you said old school backpacking, I'm wondering, how cool would it be for someone to recreate maybe Granny Gatewood's AT hike using only what was available to Granny Gatewood at that time? I mean, old school, you want to talk about old school backpacking? I mean, I think we take a lot of things for granted right now, and everything that's available to us, the technology, the communication devices, the maps, everything else. And, what a story it would be for somebody to recreate a hike like that using only the technology and the clothing and the boots and the shoes, whatever, that were available at that time.
There was this guy that I met at Trail Days called Homemade. That was his trail name. And he stopped by the Sawyer booth, and he showed us the backpack that he was using for his through hike. And he made it when he was 18. And I'll send you a picture of it when we conclude, because it was truly, I took a picture because it was so cool. It was, I think, 18 pounds, just the pack. And he was using just like bare minimum gear. And he was hiking barefoot. And that was just the choice that he made. And he was in Damascus. And so he already had, 500 miles under his belt. And it was just fascinating getting to talk to somebody.
Under his calluses.
Under his calluses.
Yeah.
And he literally, I asked him why. And he said, just because I kind of wanted to. And I think that's such a good reason. Like, fantastic. You're doing what you want to do. That's great. But that was a very impressive person that I met at Trail Days.
Now, I hold in high esteem anybody who does one of the American long trails. I mean, what an accomplishment. But if I think back to people who were doing it back in the early 2000s or even before that, it just blows my mind how they're able to accomplish something like that with the resources they had available at that time. Just wild.
Absolutely. I say old school backpacking, but that's when I was 10. I'm currently 26. So that was, not that long ago, realistically, in the grand scheme of things. But we did have like big, heavy stoves. Like, I'm used to carrying a lot on my back. And I think that was a really good segue for me to have, or like background for me to have before ultralight, because I never got that mindset of it all has to be super minimal. I was very much so like, we are out here to have an adventure, and this is the stuff we have to have our adventure with. So
now,
and Oats, I think there is something beautiful in that.
Oats, that is perfect. Let's use that as this segue to
it's the hiking pole.
It's the hiking pole, and that's pole spelled with 2 L's, like a survey, not like the thing you carry in your hand out there. And so this is a 7-question survey that's going to help me give you a score on the sanity scale from 1 to 100. 1 being completely insane, 100 being completely sane. Now, someone who's already done the AT, that's an automatic 25-point deduction. So your highest possible score is 75.
Beautiful.
Okay. Now, have you heard the hiking pole before?
I heard it on the Chardonnays episode. I think she got like middle of the road 50. So I'm going to see how low I can go.
All right. So first question, trekking poles or no trekking poles? And this is not rapid fire. This is you give me your answer and then you give me your justification for the answer. It helps you with my scoring.
Trekking poles are a whole nother set of appendages. A whole nother set of appendages. You need 2 more arms or 2 more legs. Great, you've got them. I love my trekking poles. I've had the same Hiker Hunger trekking poles from 2020, so they've got a lot of miles on them, and I love them. Trekking poles all the way. My knees thank me for it every day.
Okay. Number 2, what's on your feet? Boots or trail runners?
Trail runners. I love my ultras. I love the zero drop. They just happen to work for me. Fun fact, my feet have grown a full size since I started through hiking. So maybe I get a little bonus there. Who can say?
Nice. Expanding feet. I'm not sure how that calculates into this final score, but we'll see how it goes.
Okay, I trust you.
Okay. Question number 3. When it comes to your shelter system, do you prefer a tent, tarp, hammock, bivvy, or hey, let's just cowboy camp?
So going back to the trekking pole question, I have a trekking pole tent. So they're even more essential. I have a Hyperlight Unbound 2-person tent. I've tried all different kinds of tents, all different sizes. I really like a tent for my shelter because I don't want to rely on finding the perfect trees for my hammock. And I don't like bugs crawling on me, so I'm not going for a tarp. So I like an enclosed something. And the Hyperlight Unbound is a fantastic size for me or me and another person or me and another person and my dog. It's super easy to set up. The only thing to keep in mind with it is you can kind of see through it. It's pretty, it's white and see-through kind of. And that doesn't matter to me at all because I like being alone when I'm in the woods. But that's my only thing to note, if that does concern you, but it doesn't concern me at all. So it's my favorite shelter that I've ever tried, for sure.
Got it. Now, what is your base weight? This is not a question on the poll, just curious.
Sure, it depends. It depends on the trail and the weather. I get really cold, so if there's gonna be freezing weather, it goes up to maybe like 12 or 13 with my camera. Like I have a Sony A6400 like DSLR. That's, just over a pound. I also carry a bear canister when I'm in bearitory. So, that's another 2 pounds or whatever. That's one of my own anxieties that plays into, it's just how I like to experience the outdoors. And people get pretty judgmental sometimes when I say I carry a bear canister and they go, oh, you're not ultralight. You must be really old school. It's like, well, no, this is just for me and my sleeping at night.
We pack our fears. We pack our fears, don't we?
We pack our fears. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's a nice way to put it. Bearitory. I haven't heard that.
Bearitory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Nice. All right. Question number 4. When it comes to your sleep system, are you one of those who uses a sleeping bag or you go quilt?
It depends again. I have a 20-degree Thermarest Hyperion, and I love that. And if it's getting below freezing, I will also bring my 40-degree Hyperlight quilt and shove that in there as like a layer for additional warmth when I'm, going through somewhere that's going to be below freezing. Otherwise, the Hyperion gets it done. And then if I'm going to be somewhere hot, I just use the Hyperlight quilt, and I love it. But I also don't use a sleeping pad that's inflatable. I use just a stereotypical like foam cell Nemo short, because I don't need anything below my knees. So I just use a short, and I love it. I sleep so well on trail.
Okay. Question number, 5, I believe. Question number 5. This is a big point deduction. Watch out. When it comes to food, stove, cold soak, or stoveless?
Stoveless. I don't even cold soak. I have the palate of an 8-year-old. And so I get a lot of comments on my diet on trail. I also try not to talk about it too much in like my freelance work, because I don't want people to take advice from me because it's bad. On the AT, my favorite thing to do after, I guess, halfway, I discovered I really loved sugar cookie mix from Family Dollar, and I just get the full pound sugar cookie mix and just like mix it and eat it. Yeah, that's you asked the right question for that one.
What else besides the sugar cookie mix is part of your stoveless food out there?
I love tortillas and peanut butter, and my recent obsession has been the Gorp bag, which is just trail mix, but I like throwing the ends of random things in there. Like if I have some crumbs, like I'll just throw the crumbs in there, or if it's like, and I don't want to put them on the ground, if I have the end of some beef jerky, I'll throw that in there. I'll frequently, when I go into town, and I just re-up it as I go, as I hike. And it's the same Ziploc bag. It's just getting picked over as I pick out my favorite things and my favorite crunchies. And so as I go into resupply, I'll get like a bag of Chex Mix, 2 packets of M&Ms, and just throw those in there, and, just to kind of cover my bases for what I'm going to eventually pick out.
Got it. All right. Question number 6. Is life better above or below the tree line?
Ooh, I am from the East Coast, so I don't do too much hiking above tree line. I think my only experience with it has been in like Maine and Vermont in those kind of rocky balds, and then in Colorado, like above tree line. And the storms scared the pee out of me several times. That's one of those things that I was like, well, I've made every decision to get myself in this spot, and I either need to keep walking or sit down in lightning position or go down there and get down in lightning position. And it's like, I like giving myself those kinds of questions and conflicts to deal with. But that being said, I really don't like lightning, so I'm going to say below.
All right. And last question in the hiking poll, what's more important, pack weight or luxury items?
Oh, luxury items. Can I say both? I don't know. For me, it depends. Because some of them are worth it and some of them aren't. And I'm constantly figuring out what's worth it and what isn't. Like this past trek on the long trail, I had a Bluetooth keyboard that I was like, this is great. I'm going to blog every day. I'm going to write every day, which I've done on hikes before, on longer hikes than this. And I've kept up with it. And I was like, this is going to be a useful addition to my pack. And I didn't use it once. I took it out after like 4 days. I was like, I'm never going to use this. So I'd say luxury items. Okay. I can always carry more for the most part. Just take 40 steps, sit down, take a couple breaths, stand up, take 40 steps if you get tired. So, you'll eventually get there.
That's right. I talked to a Frenchman who, by the name of Thomas, who one of his luxury items that he had to have out there, he would not negotiate, was a charcuterie board.
Very nice. Was it like a beautiful wooden one? Like,
oh yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
That's right. All right. Stand by, Oats. I got to do some math here. We're going to take your answers and put them through the Hiker Trash radio algorithm. Let's see. I've got to carry the 3. We're going to divide by root 5. Multiply that by pi. And then I've got to make a slight adjustment for the fear factor of your mom, who is currently calling search and rescue to see where you are because she hasn't heard from you in the last half hour. And I come up with a score of 47.
I'll take it. I don't know what that means, but I'm here for it.
Nice. Hey, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from the advertisers, pay some bills. And when we come back, we're going to hear about how you got involved in through hiking and also some of your more recent adventures. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back. And welcome back. We are talking to Katie Houston. Catherine Houston, professional.
Wow.
Catherine
That's a
Houston.
Throwback. That's only when I'm in trouble.
AKA Oats, her new professional name. This took a turn that your mom never saw coming. But now
I know, right? She raised hiker trash unintentionally. Or maybe intentionally. Who knows?
I like that. She raised hiker trash. Yeah, I'm always on the lookout for a trail name for the episode. So I'm looking for something clever, something funny, something unusual. I might be able to work that in there somehow, but we'll keep looking. That's okay.
Right. Sounds good.
Now, let's back up a little bit, and we would love to hear about your background, where you grew up. Did you play any sports in high school? And how did you get involved in the through hiking cult? Because, I mean, let's face it, any organization, any group that convinces you to carry everything on your back and sleep in the dirt for months on end, that's got to be a cult.
Spend lots of money doing it. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm from Asheville, North Carolina, born and raised. I love it here. I'm still currently here. And growing up, my family was not terribly outdoorsy. My dad did some like runs in the park, and they had their lives before kids. But growing up as a family, we weren't terribly outdoorsy in the sense of like going on backpacking trips and big adventures. But we were outdoors a lot. And my dad actually, when I was little, built a tree house in our backyard and for me and my brother to play with. And I slept in the tree house from ages 10 through 12, just outside every night because I liked it. And I still get nostalgic for the feeling of like the cold air on me in the winter and being under a million different blankets and sleeping bags and hearing the wind and just being outdoors, but not exposed. I think that's also why I like shelters. But they quickly realized that I had a lot of energy that they needed to direct somewhere soon. So they put me in this program called TASC, which is the American Adventure Service Corps, TAASC. It's a local nonprofit run by some previously Outward Bound instructors, and it's for kids ages 10 through 18. And they had these different groups that kind of changed as I was in the program. I was in from maybe ages 10 through 14. And we would have weekly meetings where we did everything from they'd teach us how to cook a meal on a camp stove to emergency preparedness to we'd watch into thin air and talk about what went wrong and how we can make good decisions in the field to planning our trips. And
that sounds traumatizing right there, watching into thin air and talking about what went wrong.
I know. I was probably 14 at that point, but I do remember that clearly because it made an impact. But, I think things through and really take the weather into account whenever I'm out in the field now. So pros and cons, I guess. But yeah, I ended up being with that group, and every month we would do a different adventure. So my first backpacking trip was my first trip with them to Sam's Knob, and it was a beautiful weekend trip, in and out, hike in, camp, hike out, little group of kids. We'd play games and hide and seek, and we harvested blueberries. Like, it was so stellar. And then every month after that, we were doing something different. We were canoeing, we were caving. I got to sleep in a cave overnight in pitch black, dark, and, you know, poop in a bag as one does in a cave. And we did rock climbing, rappelling, all of these cool things. So I really credit Task with my confidence in the outdoors from a young age, because I kind of, that's what they instilled in me. I played sports. I was a swimmer. I was on the swim team. I was also a huge band nerd. I play the clarinet. I am now anti-Squidward because I have my first nephew, my first little kiddo, my brother's kiddo. So I'm trying to make anti-Squidward stick because I think it is funny. And I was in marching band, and I did a lot of stuff. I was in this thing called Civil Air Patrol, which is the auxiliary of the Air Force. Very nearly applied for the Air Force Academy. I went to their summer seminar, got top female candidate, and then said, no, thank you, not for me. Because it wasn't, but it was for my brother. So he ended up taking that path in life. But this Civil Air Patrol program was for me in a lot of other different ways. I, as a young female, was able to have command of a flight or of a squadron of 50 plus cadets. We would do PT. I learned how to fly in high school. So for my senior project, it was a solo in a Cessna 172, like a little single prop airplane, a little tiny prop airplane.
You have your pilot's license?
I do not. They let you solo before you get the pilot's license. The pilot's license is for flying other people around, which my brother did get. And ironically, he was in pilot training before he got his driver's license. And so my dad would have to drive him to the airport so he could fly a plane by himself and then drive him back home, which was hilarious.
That is ironic. Yes.
Yeah. So, and then getting involved in the Thru hiking cult. I had been telling my parents for years that I wanted to do the Appalachian Trail after college, just because I had this close experience with it from being in Task. I knew some people that had done it through Task, and so I was eager, and that was kind of always the plan. And then I graduated college, and my dad was like, wait, you're not really going to do that, are you, alone? And I was like, yeah, I am. And he said, well, I guess I have to come with you then. And I said, okay, old man, get your backpack on, come down to Springer Mountain with me and we'll go together. And he said, never mind, I'll just drop you off, have fun. So yeah, I ended up doing that, the AT after college, got bit by the bug, and here we are.
You called your dad's bluff.
I did. I knew. It's 2,200 miles. I mean, he's got 4 cats. Who's going to take care of the cats?
Nice. And let's talk a little bit about your day job. What do you do to finance your adventures?
Sure. So tomorrow, in 2 days, am officially starting full-time with Sawyer as their community manager. So I was kind of so I first got in with Sawyer back earlier at the beginning of this year. And I was doing freelance work with them, doing their social media and doing some of these smaller partnerships and trying to understand the position that they were kind of floating to me of this community manager, this big abstract concept. Because I had worked in social media before, I had worked in blog writing before. I have a lot of experience with like freelance work. But this community building was something that was really interesting to me, but I didn't have any like hard experience in, besides like managing the blogger team for the trek with their tie-ins with social media. And so I'm just, I guess when I first got that position at Sawyer and we were talking about what does success look like in this position, they told me it was not measured in likes or engagement or any of those typical metrics that you would see on social media. It was rather measured in the diversity, authenticity of the stories that I am able to tell from the community. And so, I mean, I'm now utilizing these partnerships and like with Thru Hike Syndicate, through our podcasts like you, to then kind of use these different tools to tell those stories. So like using social media, using the blog on Sawyer's website, all of those kinds of tools to tell these diverse and authentic stories, as well as, anything that would help the community at large. So I just had an amazing meeting today with the director for the National Cleanup Day. And we got to talk about how aligned our values are with leave no trace and leaving it better than you found it. And, all of those values aligning and the stars aligning for all of these partnerships is just one fulfilling step forward after the other for this position. So I'm just very much so trying to not screw up this amazing opportunity that I have. And just channeling my enthusiasms in the right way and sustainably and all of that jazz.
Well, congratulations on the new gig, the full-time gig. And I think this says a lot about Sawyer as an organization. I love the fact that they are not about the likes and the clicks, and that they're about telling stories and building community. And I think that is, people ask me, what is my podcast about? And I tell them I talk to a lot of people out there who have stories. And sometimes the story is what happened on the trail. They have some good stories about, type 2 fun out there. But more often than not, the true story is about that person, how that person came to be out on the trail, someone's life story. There's so many people out there doing amazing things that have had to overcome incredible adversity. And so it feels like, this is a great partnership between Hiker Trash Radio and Sawyer, because I think we're similarly aligned. How big is Sawyer as an organization? How many employees do you know?
I don't have the answer to that question. I can tell you some general information. The company is actually based in Florida. That is where the factory is, where things are made. And we have a rather large team there, from the people that work there to Kurt, the owner. But me being on the marketing team, I am one of about, I don't know, maybe it's a small team. Our team meetings are, half a dozen people, maybe a little bit more. Between half a dozen and a dozen are usually on our weekly meetings. And I know all of them by name, and we have fun show and tells. And it's very truly, I'm very grateful for the relationship that I have with this company, and being a part of the team is really what it feels like. It is small and intimate, and I know everybody's names, and I know what their jobs are. They know what mine is, and we know each other's strengths as people. We know each other's anxieties as people to an extent, and so in a professional sense. So we know what is the most effective way to interact with this person, as well as the kindest, what is it. It also informs the kindnesses that you can do for your teammates on the team that you are on, as well. So I would say it's the size that is perfect for kind of what I was looking for. Just enough for collaboration, not enough for messages to get lost in bureaucracy. It is a family-owned company too, so Travis, our marketing director, is the son of Kurt, the owner, and so it's a small team altogether. But then we're in 80 countries all over the world doing the international efforts, and so we have over 140 charity partners that we work with. And so as far as the reach of Sawyer and the community of Sawyer, that is very, very vast, and it's something that I'm only trying to help keep on the tracks and in the right direction.
Well, big kudos to Sawyer for being a company with that kind of reach, internationally, and still having a small town feel to it. I mean, all of my interactions as Sawyer and Hiker Trash Radio have partnered together, all of my interactions with the people at Sawyer have felt very, close family-like connections, so big shout out to you, of course, to Travis, who, he's always quick to respond to any question I might have. Lindsay has done a fantastic job as well. So I really appreciate our interactions. And I like the way that Sawyer has been able to maintain that, attentiveness and responsiveness. And, sometimes big companies can be totally unresponsive, and you feel like you're not talking to anybody in particular. And so I think Sawyer's done a fantastic job with that.
Thank you. To add on to that, I love that my trail name is what I go by in this industry, because I'm able to pop into people's DMs and say, hey, it's Oats. It's Oats with Sawyer. And I think there is a immediate community with somebody that has the background of thru hiking, or even just recognizing that that is clearly a trail name. And I am generally a pretty positive person. So I really value like those kinds of interactions. And I think my trail name is a fantastic segue into having genuine connections that do not feel like you are talking to a big company, but like you are getting the information that you need and you're talking to a professional representative. But it's, you know, it's easy. It's less, I don't know, maybe rigid, more personable.
Well, you are very chipper.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe I should start going by that.
That's a lot of pressure. That's too much pressure. Hey, let's segue now into, let's talk about some of your adventures out there on the trail. And you've got a great resume. I mean, the AT in 2019, was that your first like real thru hiking experience?
That was my first time backpacking more than 5 days.
Wow, that's huge. That's huge, going from a 5-day trip to a multi-month 2,200-mile trip. And that's a huge chunk to bite off.
It was. I actually had a shakedown hike the winter before I did the AT on the Artlope Trail, and I was planning on doing it start to finish. I dropped my car at the end. My friend shuttled me to the beginning, and I got 15 miles in. It was December, and so it was really cold, and there was an ice storm that night. So I woke up, and my zipper to my tent had been frozen shut. So I had to like army crawl out of my tent. Everything was frozen. All of my water in my bottles was frozen. I had slept with my filter, but because all of the water in the bottles was frozen, I had no way to drink clean water. And my phone, even though I had slept with it, was at 10%, even though it was at 80% when I turned it off the night before. And so I lost my navigation. And so I ended up bailing on the shakedown, turned around, went the 12 miles back down to Camp Daniel Boone, interrupted a wedding, sat on the front lawn for about an hour and a half eating Nutella with a spoon until my mom came to pick me up. And then I said, I can do the Appalachian Trail.
Fantastic. That is great. And your mom, of course, said, you know what, if I don't hear from you in 3 days, I'm calling search and rescue.
Exactly. And I said, make it 5. And apparently she went, no, 3.
Yeah. Yes. Now, I like to ask this question because I think it's very insightful for people who are considering, who have never done this before and are considering doing one of the long trails. What would Oats at Mount Katahdin whisper into the ear of Oats at Springer Mountain?
He's your partner.
Did you say
no,
leave your partner?
I met somebody on trail that it didn't work out, but that was the first thing that popped in my head, because when I think of the summit, I think of being there with him. Yeah. And that's not necessarily negative, but my first gut reaction is like, oh, you know, you're better off on your own, I think is what I would tell her. I love myself, and I truly think I'm as it should be, I'm the only one that knows what I need, that knows what I want. And so I don't have to communicate that to anybody when it's just me. So I know that's a common theme I keep coming back to, but truly having just had the big life changes that I have, it's something I'm finding so much comfort in with the PTSD diagnosis is myself and being alone. There is just so much comfort there. So I'd probably tell her, you're going to be just fine on your own. And I think that's the confidence maybe that I needed at the time.
Okay. Well said. Highlight of the AT?
Ooh, I loved the Shenandoahs. The waysides, the blackberry ice cream, getting a hamburger halfway through the day and then still getting to hike, the all-you-can-eat breakfast. I ran into a bunch of really special Tramley members that I hadn't seen since the Smoky Mountains in the Shenandoahs. So it was really just a perfect culmination for me. And I also did it alone. It was before I had met my hiking partner. And so I was also kind of just going off of what I wanted. And so it felt very authentic.
I'm thinking about adding an 8th question to the hiking poll. And I would love to know what their top 3 topics of conversation on the trail are. I think that would provide a lot of insight into someone's state of mind.
Fascinating. That's very true. For me, I love talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I will talk about Dungeons and Dragons with anybody for as long as you will allow me to talk. And
that is a throwback. That Dungeons and Dragons, that's from my childhood. Is it making a resurgence, or did it never go away?
It never went away. I have a lot of friends whose parents played Dungeons and Dragons, and I have gotten to play and run games with them and their parents.
You're lucky your trail name isn't Dungeon Master.
I know. I'm DM. Yeah, I could talk about that forever. I could talk about my dog forever, and I often do because she's a cool looking dog and people stop me all the time. And her name is Thru, which is really weird. And so I'm constantly like telling the story of how I got her and everything, which might be the perfect segue.
Into? I haven't heard the third topic though.
Oh, the third topic. Oh, shoot. I don't know. From there, it's just whatever the other person, like whatever I see the light in their eyes go off if I bring it up, or they say something that I like to hyperfixate on. I love finding a mutual obsession. That's my bread and butter. Either something that I love that they're interested in, something they love that I'm interested in, or vice versa. Like we both love the same thing. Those are the conversations where I'm like, this is the best. Because sometimes I meet people and I start slinging a little bit about Dungeons and Dragons because I listen to a lot of like campaign podcasts on trail, and somebody will be like, oh, do you listen to that, and that? And I'm like, I'm fully caught up with all of them. So those are my favorite moments when I can mutually hyperfixate.
Wait a second. There are campaign podcasts?
Yes. Critical Role is one of the most famous. That's been going on for over a decade.
That's a thing? Holy cow.
Critical Role specifically is probably the most famous. And the guy that runs the game for that group actually writes a lot of the official campaigns in the official Dungeons and Dragons books. So he builds the worlds. It's a true talent. And ironically, what I love about it is the storytelling that you get to do. It's also improvisational. And so you're able to share vulnerability and connection with others in a funny, comedic, role-playing way. There's so many applications for it. I will talk about this forever unless you cut me off.
Now, Oats, I'm going to play Dungeon Master here. I'm going to steer us back to the trail and get us back to what you were going to segue to.
Yes, my good dog. So I've mentioned the Smokies on the AT a couple times. I actually, because of my 30-pound bag, and how fast I was going initially, I got really gnarly shin splints and really severe Achilles tendonitis coming out of the Smokies. Thankfully, my whole family's in Asheville. And so I was planning a 0 anyway. The 0 turned into 3 weeks. I'd started early intentionally in February because I wanted to stay ahead of the bubble because solitude. And then I lost my head start because I was sitting around for 3 weeks. So I skipped up about 300 miles to Narrows, Virginia, and then finished north to Katahdin, and then had this section of Southern Virginia to finish. So I went back, did that in September, got to stay at Woods Hole for the first time, which is a really special place in my heart, and started going south. And I was with my hiking partner at the time, and I liked sending him up climbs first because his trail name was Legs, and he lived up to it. He was really fast, and I'm not fast. I can walk a long time. I got stamina, but I get pretty self-conscious about my hiking speed when I'm hiking uphill with somebody faster. So I always sent him up first, and he always just wait for me at the top or whatever. So I see him because there's switchbacks up this like section of ridge or whatever. I see him encounter this guy with 3 huskies, and they start having a little conversation. I'm still hiking up the switchbacks, and he yells down at me, "Hey, babe, do you want a dog?" And I paused for 3 seconds and yelled, "Yeah!" And so I get up there. He's got the leash to this dog in his hand. He's got the American Kennel Club paperwork from this strange man who I have not met yet. I didn't even get his name. It was a 5-minute conversation. he told us he just didn't want her anymore. He didn't have the resources to take care of all 3 dogs on trail, and that she was going to go to the pound, the next town he got to. She was 2.5, pretty, lots of hair falling off of her. She needed a brush. It was really hot in Virginia at the time, and there was a drought. So she really needed a brush. He gave us some Walmart dog food and a little block of cheese and said, "She's yours." And we walked off with her, and I thought I was going to rehome her because I have never had a dog that's been mine. I didn't even know where I was going to be living anymore. Everything was up in the air. And after a couple days, I said, I need this dog in my life forever. So here I am. She's my best friend. I take her 95% of the places that I go, 100% of the places that dogs are allowed. I will not go to a co-working space that doesn't allow my dog. She does not get separation anxiety, but I do. So she's kind of always with me.
If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're missing out on the wistful looks that Oats keeps shooting down to the lower left. I'm assuming Thru is on the floor.
She is. She's asleep. I bring her bed in every day because I'm cheap and I don't have my own office. I like having the walk-in option. So I walk in with her bed every day, and every day she chooses to lay on the concrete floor instead. But it's nice for her to have the option.
Options. I mean, you've mentioned giving yourself options. Thru also gives herself options there. So that's nice.
Yeah, she can't communicate. I gotta try where I can.
Now, Oats, we have a lot of items here on the list for your adventures, and we're not going to get to all of them. We're going to have you back on another episode to cover some of these other adventures, but I would like to hear about the Appalachian, I think is the correct pronunciation, Appalachian High Route that you did in 2022. I've never heard of that before. What is it?
Yeah, the Appalachian High Route. I was actually last year planning my adventure to be the Guadalupe Ridge Trail, which is from Carlsbad Caverns to Guadalupe Peak. It's like 100 miles in Texas, which is where I was living. I was living in Austin. So I was originally planning that one. In the spring, the wildfire risk canceled my hike days before it happened. New Mexico closed for backcountry camping. Couldn't do it. So I was like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to do it now. And then I was planning it for fall, and a flood happened, and an entire section of the trail got washed out. And so they said they don't know when it's going to be back. And so I just couldn't do it. And so I was looking for something else to do when this trail profile or this announcement on the Trek comes through about the Appalachian High Route. Jennifer Farr Davis is pioneering this new route that starts and ends in Burnsville. It's a 330-mile loop trail. It has about 130 miles of the Mountains to Sea Trail, about 130 of the Appalachian Trail, maybe like 30 or so of connectors, so secondary roads, that kind of thing, and the Black Mountain Crest Trail, which is a 12.5-mile trail up to Mount Mitchell. It was very new. I think I'm the second person to have through hiked it. There was one woman before me who beat me to it, but it was truly a remarkable route. I loved that it was so personal to me. I was so nostalgic the whole trip. The trail goes 2 miles from my dad's house past the Folk Arts Center, which is, I used to hike this when I was a kid with my dad and my brother. Like, we'd go for 1 mile and to this tree that I would have to climb on. And I have this very vivid memory of trying to climb high on this tree and being scared and being apprehensive, and my brother yelling up at me, "You're like the little engine that could, you can do it." And as I was walking on this trail, I just was having all these memories come back. Like up by Craggy Gardens, I walked by this gazebo. This is a leave no trace offense. Do not do this. I was in high school, but don't do it. That's not an excuse. Don't do it. I carved my initials into this gazebo with 2 different boyfriends from high school. So those are still there. So it was just very, very nostalgic. And then Jennifer Farr Davis is from Asheville. I actually, the other guy who pioneered the route, Jake Blood, met me and my grandma and his family at the bar in Burnsville when I finished and bought me a beer. And I ate a dozen donuts. And it was a truly remarkable route. And then I got to do the section of the Smokies that I had done on the Appalachian Trail. And it was really cool just coming back to something with a totally different perspective on who I am as a person and my confidence and everything. So it was truly spectacular route. I highly recommend it. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm also writing a trail profile on it for the trek that should come out in July. So there will be a better resource for people looking to do that route after me.
Well, that sounds like a trail of destiny for you. I mean, you had to do that trail. There's too many connecting points there for you.
I completely agree. I was able to get ice cream with my grandma and my mom at Pisgah Inn. They resupplied me several times. It was really special for sure. Oh, one of my old Tramley members, RD, came out to hike with me in the Smokies from somebody I met before the NOC on my through hike, and then didn't see again till the Shenandoahs. But we've kept in contact all these years. So I told him I was coming through, and he said he would love to come out with me for a few days. So all of these different connections coming back it was a really fantastic hike for me personally. You're absolutely right.
You just light up when you talk about it. So it's obvious.
Yeah.
Now, looking at your hiking resume, I see you did something in 2019, did something in 2020, 21, 22. Is that a pattern that you like to keep going? Is one major thing each year, or what do you think?
I have been flying by the seat of my pants since I graduated college. And so nothing has been planned from one year to the next. This has all been coincidental. The AT was the planned one. The CT, I was living at Woods Hole when the pandemic hit, and we found a camper for sale in Texas. And we said, sure, let's go live in Texas and buy that camper. And then we said, we can't work. My job was, I was working wholesale gem and mineral shows at the time, my geology degree. And the gem shows were canceled. So we decided to take the camper, and he supported me on the Colorado Trail. It just happened to work out for that year. Then the Lone Star Hiking Trail also just kind of happened to work out. I picked that one because it's in Texas. It's 100 miles, and I had a death in the family, and I needed to process it. And so that was a fantastic opportunity. Again, last year I was planning the Guadalupe Ridge Trail, but then plans changed. So I don't know. I like giving myself the break when I feel like I need it. And if I feel like I need it, then I put a plan in place.
And how was the long trail this year? The oldest American through hiking trail, the long trail.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah. It's the original.
That's amazing. Now I know. It was truly fantastic. My dog ended up doing about 100 miles with me. I did about 100 miles. I didn't walk it end to end. I skipped a section in the middle because my dog ended up, I think she was gaslighting me, but I'm not sure. So I did get her off trail, but we just woke up one morning and totally out of the blue, her front paw, she was like holding it. And if anything, she had a little bit of red irritation around her back paws. And so the front one, after I had just checked it the night before, and now she's not like letting me see it. And so we immediately turned around, got her to the vet, and the vet was like, oh, she looks great. She's good to go. And I was like, well, I'm just going to put her in doggy daycare because I was planning on doing that at mile 150 anyway. So then I just hit the trail again. But this trail was a little different because I planned a lot of visits to like all of my best friends up and down the country around this long trail trip. And also my best friend was getting married in Vermont at the end of it. So I haven't had a bookend for any of these hikes in the past, really. And so having a bookend, having my dog with me, I ended up just not doing it end to end. But it was an incredible trail. Honestly, kind of reminiscent of home. I had only ever been to Vermont when I walked to it from the AT. So the mountains didn't feel unfamiliar, though. There was definitely a hominess about it, for sure. And it was, I was pretty early. I started a day before Memorial Day. And so after the first day or two, I didn't see hardly anybody the whole trip, which was, in my opinion, good for
just
me.
The way you like. That's right. Yeah. Sounds like you had a long walk to a wedding.
I did. It was really, really fun. At the wedding, I was a bridesmaid, so I had my dress and I had the makeup. I've never had my makeup or hair done in my life. I had my makeup and hair done, and it was really fun. And her dad came in.
Were you hiking in your dress?
No, that would have been a good photo shoot though, getting the pack on. But her dad said, wow, you clean up nice. And I said, the mosquito bites are hiding underneath. And I lifted my dress a little bit, and I pick a lot. And so my whole leg was just like kind of dotted and all these little teeny scabs. But it do be like that sometimes. We had a good laugh.
All right. Now what is on, I know you didn't plan these too much, but what are you planning in the future? What are the upcoming hikes that you'd like to do?
Sure. This is kind of, I have a lot on my radar, and whenever my head tells me I need a break in the woods and it comes up naturally in my calendar that it'll work out, I'm going to either hit the Benton MacKay Trail or the Foothills Trail or the Pinhoti Trail, something on the East Coast. People ask me if I plan on doing an international through hike, and I've only ever left the country once. And so I'm still working on the Southern Appalachians, frankly. So those are the ones on my current radar. But who knows when or where or how, but as it happens.
Any anticipated date on what is the most important one? It's just kind of up in the air.
Totally up in the air. I love 3-week hikes. I love that amount of time. I think it's a beautiful amount of time. And so I really don't know. I'm going to see where that fits in. The foothills I'll probably be able to do in like a couple of days, as just I need to be in the woods now. But the other stuff will take a little bit more planning. Maybe fall for the Benton MacKay Trail is kind of what I'm leaning towards, but fall is so close already, and I just took a month off. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, for 99% of us out there, taking off 5-6 months to do a long hiking experience is out of the question. You just can't get that much time away from work unless you're retired or unless you're in between jobs or just out of college. So I think that 3-week window, I think a lot of people could kind of cobble some time together, and that's a more manageable duration for a trip.
Absolutely. That's why I've been singing the praises about the Appalachian High Route. Like, you want to do the AT, but you don't want to do the AT for 6 months. Appalachian High Route, great option. Loop trail, finish where you started.
All right. Hey, Oats, you know where we are right now?
Where are we?
Hiking hacks.
Beautiful.
It is time for Oats to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. What do you have for us?
Okay, well, I've been noodling, and I think the most versatile, lightweight, all-around addition to most packs that I would throw in is Leukotape. I have used the Leukotape for many things. Actually, it's funny, Garage Grown Gear is a sponsor of this episode. I wrote an article for Garage Grown Gear on why Leukotape rocks and 6 different ways that you can use it. So as soon as my feet start feeling anything, I slap some Leukotape on, and it's fine. It's beyond fine. I leave it on for a couple days and I don't have to think about it again. I typically will put it on old address paper, so I don't have to take the whole big roll with me. Old sticker paper, I'll take a couple strips and have one paper with my strips of Leukotape, because that keeps the adhesion good. That's your additional hack for the Leukotape hack. But you can use it to repair gear, or I actually, interestingly, on the Appalachian Trail, I used my trekking poles. The way I was using them, maybe the way the pressure was on my finger, I developed trigger finger in my ring finger on my right hand, and it was getting stuck. And so I would use Leukotape to kind of make a makeshift splint or just a little bit more support so it wouldn't get as stuck. And it actually helped alleviate some of my pain. So it's kind of like duct tape, but safe on your skin. You can use it as KT tape for muscle pain. Yeah, go read that article, because that's got more nuances and fun pictures. I think my favorite picture in that is Thru is sitting there panting with her little arms crossed, and I've got the Leukotape roll just sitting directly on her head.
It's like duct tape without having to lose the skin.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Nice. All right. So there you have it. We are just about done here. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Katie. Want to thank her for joining us this week. Oats, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
Sure. I am at Oats Hikes on pretty much every social platform. And I have a website, oatshikes.com. Pretty easy. You can see my stuff online where I've been publishing. I write for Garage Grown Gear, Hyperlight, Appalachian Gear Co., Sawyer, obviously, the Trek, and those are my current freelance clients. And then I also have my old blogs. I did daily updates from the Appalachian High Route, which for my 1 year anniversary, I'm going to see if Jennifer will let me take over the Appalachian High Route account and kind of do a trailversary memory of my trek last year to get some more eyes on the route. So be looking out for that. But yeah, that's where you can find me. Oats Hikes.
I will absolutely keep my eyes peeled for that. That sounds awesome. All right. Hey, remember to check out Hiker Trash Radio on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at hikertrashradio@gmail.com.
Off the beaten path.
Now, unfortunately, we can't always be on the trail. And when we're not, we need to find a way to get our adventure fix. So, Oats, I'm going to ask you to share some outdoor adventure media with our listeners to help them get by. This could be like a book or a movie or a documentary. We call this segment Off the Beaten Path. Any recommendations?
Oh my gosh, so many. Christine Reed by authored Alone in Wonderland, which I'm currently reading, which is really incredible.
Christine was on the podcast earlier, and I've got her scheduled for an episode in season 6 upcoming here. So she's a lot of fun to talk to. Yeah.
She's fantastic. She also has this like women's writing group that I'm just getting my wheels on the ground in. So I think it'll be a good influence on me.
Did you respond? She was looking for authors or looking for stories. Did you reach out to her on that? Are you going to be included? I
would love to be. I am going to submit a story. It is up to her to determine if the quality will match the rest of the quality in her book. But I have plenty of stories about blood, sweat, and tears to contribute to her book about women with uteruses on trail. It really sounds like it'll be an amazing product.
Well, I doubt that I have any pull whatsoever, but when I talk to her in the upcoming episode, I will be sure to drop your name.
Oh, would love it. Just give me a good word.
All right. So other than Alone in Wonderland, did you have anything else?
Oh, The Unlikely Thru Hiker, I've heard is amazing, but I haven't read it yet. I've popped into his book club, Derek Lugo's book club a couple times.
Mr. Fabulous. Now just he's down to Fab, I think.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great.
Yep.
I love popping into his book club just because I think he's a fantastic perspective to hear, and he's always so genuine and authentic.
His book is a great read.
Fantastic. It's on my list. I have so many on my list. Jennifer Farr Davis, the only book that I read about the trail before I did the trail, the Appalachian Trail, was Becoming Odessa, which was her story of her first thru hike on the Appalachian Trail with little to no experience as a 21-year-old female solo. And so I saw that, and I saw myself, and my girlfriend at the time had gifted me the book. And so it just felt really poetic for my life at that point. And I reread it constantly. I really love it. But she has several other books. Heather Onish Anderson has some fantastic books as well that I still need to dig into. This is my list. I got a big book list.
Those are all great recommendations. Thank you.
Of course. Have we not asked you?
All right. And before we wrap things up today, just one more segment for you called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Us About? What do we miss today?
What did we miss today? We covered a lot of ground. Maybe just everyone go brush up on the principles of Leave No Trace. Just a little call out for Leave No Trace. Just I'm blowing them a kiss with this message of a little refresher to not pick the wildflowers, to not walk on fragile soils, to not stealth camp when you can, and just take care of the land for other people. Dig your cat holes, pack out your pup's poop, all that good stuff. Respect wildlife. I really, really care about the maintenance of the trail because it gets done mostly by volunteers, and we really need to remember that. If you're curious about it, find a local trail maintaining club near you, and maybe go follow along with them on one of their adventures. Actually, one more shout out for the Carolina Mountain Club. Happy birthday! They're my local trail maintaining club, and they're turning 100 this year. Their centennial celebration, and it's actually going to be at the North Carolina Arboretum, which is 20 minutes from where I live. the next month on a Sunday from 1 to 4. So I'll be there. Come say hi. And it's just a great way to get in touch with the community. Fantastic.
All right. Hey, we are finished. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Catherine. That's for your mom there.
She'll love it.
We wish you the very best in your new full-time 5 days a week job and in your future adventures. And we hope you'll consider coming back at some point and sharing some more epic stories.
I would love to. You know where to find me. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. As we close up today, any shout outs to friends and family?
Oh my gosh. Rena, Sky, Mia, David, James, Quincy, Grace, my mom, my dad, my grandma. That's my main, like, I'm holding all of those people very, very close right now. And I'm immeasurably grateful for every one of them and their parents. Everyone, Susie Pruitt, Susan Kitsit, everybody, Buffy, Brett. Okay, that's all. I have a lot of friends. They're all fantastic.
That's its own segment right there.
It totally is. Yeah. I can talk about my friends forever.
All right. Hey, thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you're going to have to hide those mosquito bites under your bridesmaid dress for that wedding in Vermont. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.